Hey everyone, I'm here with Harris Kinney. He's the founder of IntroCRM. He is a close partner. He's also a good friend and a great dad as well. So, Harris, thanks for coming on with us. We are going to talk about Outbound in 2023. Obviously, a hot topic, but a unique topic in 2023, given the economic downturn that's currently taking place. And so, inbound is going to slow down. Outbound is going to go up. Now, there's a few problems with that, right? You can do outbound all you want, but today you may never land in an email inbox. Any of your efforts may never be seen. And so the reason I brought Harris on is he's an expert here. He does this, he lives it, he breathes it, he does it on behalf of clients, and he has come up with a formula that is really helpful, but he's also discovered the problems that come with outbound in 2023. So Harris, thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to speak with you again. And great dad most of the time. I will say sending a cold email is much easier than getting a 2-year-old to brush their teeth if they don't feel like it.
Oh God, 100%, 100%.
Sometimes I lose my cool, but email's easy. I could talk about email all day. And
Yeah,
I think that the big picture themes that you're talking about are a really good place to start, which is just like what's happening in the landscape for sales in general, because there are a lot of things going on that are affecting reps that are totally outside of a sales rep's control that will affect their ability to hit their numbers and that they
yeah,
may not be totally aware of. And frankly, their manager or if they're working for a founder or whomever, that level may not be aware either. And so, if you're responsible for closing deals, whatever level of the org chart you're in, y- you now have to take ownership of this conversation around how do I make sure I'm getting in front of the right people with the right messaging? Because just to be honest with you, the people that aren't in it doing it every day, they're just not learning quickly enough. Things are changing so fast. Unless you're in it every day, it's impossible to keep up. I'm doing this every day for a bunch of clients and I'm constantly learning. I'm in WhatsApp groups and I'm learning things on LinkedIn. The like short takeaways, like you as an individual, if you're responsible for deals and carrying deals, it is your job to understand what's happening bigger picture, because if you're not hitting quota or whatever, they're not going to understand why or care why. And so the better you
totally.
can speak to that, the more in control you'll be of being able to help your customers and being able to navigate all this.
So sales reps, they really need to educate their leadership team or their manager on what's happening in the landscape of 2023 and outbound. And we're going to tell you what to educate them on, right? And so this will be useful for you if you're experiencing that conundrum of I'm doing this much outbound and I get no responses. This is going to be useful for you. And where we want to start is some of the problems that Harris you brought to our attention. We're going to go through a couple of these points that Harris brought and we started chatting about yesterday, and we were like, this is super valuable content for all of the sales reps out there that are hustling. And so the first one is data quality. So there's a data quality issue. Harris, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, as people are probably seeing online, reading in the news, a lot of people are changing jobs right now. And what that means is that the places that you would normally source data from, your data providers, you know, the places you normally get data from are increasingly inaccurate. So if you're relying on list pulls, and frankly, this is even true if you're working leads within your existing CRM. If you say, oh, well, I'm just going to run a sequence to everybody I talked to,
Yep.
in the last 3 months of last year, there's a decent chance that one, if not multiple of those people have moved on. And so, you need to kind of go in from the get-go and just realize, like, is this person who I think I'm talking to, do they even work there at all? Is that
Yeah.
company still in business? And so there's a couple tools that you can do specifically around email validation. And there's a bunch of email validation tools in the market, but the idea is basically you're testing if an email address is deliverable.
Yep.
So that's table stakes. Like if you're, and I don't care who you're getting data from, this is all the way up to like the most expensive data providers that charge $20,000 a year and up for access. I'm seeing people reporting like very high error rates and very high bounce rates. So it's not enough to just check a box in your database tool or whatever
Yeah.
saying, give me only verified addresses. Ideally you're verifying addresses as close as possible to when you're interacting with those people.
Mhm.
And if you're going to be doing some account-based research on like an existing lead in your tool, like you're in Close and you pull up a lead and you dig into the past conversation and you remember what that company does, like don't just send the one email to the one person you were talking about. go to LinkedIn, go find a couple more contacts and pop those contacts in there too. Because if you get a bounce, get ready to then contact the second or third person so that you can multi-thread and try to find the right person. It's not good enough to just email the person because they're probably there, because they might not be, or whatever. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. So the days of, hey, I'm going to go in to this expensive data provider, pull this list, blast some emails, that's not necessarily going to give you the quality of data that you need. And it's not that the email address is wrong, it's that there's just so much movement within the industry that the data is not accurate because they simply don't work there.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah,
so
they
much
might have
that
changed
going on.
jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows, right? A lot of people are
Yep.
moving between different departments. Like a
Mhm.
whole division gets shut down, and all of a sudden this person's doing something totally different.
Yep.
So yeah, basically the way it has worked for recent times um, is changing. And the reality is that the data companies, they can't keep up. They have
Sure.
so many hundreds of millions of records, and they oftentimes will update a percentage of that database quarterly. Um, you know and if you're using an all-in-one tool that says that they'll do all of these things for you, they'll get the contacts, they'll verify the addresses, they'll AI write your email, and they'll send the email for you. The problem is, like, you can't see where your problem lies. All you look is at the end of the
Mhm.
day that you're not getting responses, and you can't
Yeah.
troubleshoot what's going on. And so your tech stack matters because it's going to potentially limit your ability to even troubleshoot why you're not connecting. And so you can't say to whoever you're responsible to where there's a problem, where your funnel is like locked up.
Oh, that's extremely frustrating. Which makes it difficult to educate your leadership team on what is happening and why you're not hitting quota.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, just as a solution, that's a problem. Sales reps are going to be facing it, even with the big names in data. They're not able to keep up. They're probably having cuts themselves in some cases where their team is smaller, so handicaps their ability even more to keep up with that data. So, like, what would be a viable solution for that problem before we move on to the next one?
Yeah. Yeah. And they are. I just saw yesterday a big data provider had let go an entire team, like exactly what you're talking about. So solution is to be a little bit more dynamic. So there's ways to build lists and gather data in a way that's um, where you're tapping multiple sources.
Mhm.
And so, like, I like to use a tool called Clay, but there's other ways to do this, using web scraping, using other techniques in order to
Okay.
match certain data with other data. So,
Okay.
like, if you can get a list of domains of companies that where something is true about them,
Yeah.
and then you go and you find the LinkedIn company pages, and then you use the LinkedIn company pages to find the contacts. It's a different process for getting a lead list rather than before you would maybe just hit in a filter and say, okay, find me anybody who's using Shopify or whatever, and say, okay, that's good enough.
Right.
So basically, my overall recommendation on data is triangulating around like multi-point list building, where you're using different data points to try to build a better list rather than just a single thing from a single source. And using heuristics like, if I can't find the company's LinkedIn page, I'm just going to scrap it. Like, if they don't have a
Yeah.
LinkedIn page, they're probably not big enough for what I'm selling.
Yep.
I'm just gonna, and so it's more of like an iterative list building process where you start with a bigger list, you pair it with other tools, and then you filter down, and then you end up with a better list where, and this will be I think something we'll talk about a little bit later, is you'll be able to write more relevant messaging,
Mhm.
because people aren't impressed anymore if you just say, hey, it looks like you use Shopify. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
duh.
Personalization is the
What do
name
you
of the
want?
game for sure too. Absolutely in 2023. So, all right, let's say you've gone through that hoop, you've educated your leadership team, hey, this is a problem. Now you're being more dynamic to get better data, which takes more time and effort, human effort that not a lot of tech can just solve for you. Which makes you a good sales rep. Sometimes you just do have to do the work, right? And get the data and hit it from several points. So now you have the data, that's great, but the next biggest problem that we're running into in 2023 is deliverability, and making sure that you're even landing in their inbox. So you've done all this work, you've put together this amazing personalized email, whatever you've done to personalize it, video messaging, whatever. Now you've sent it off into the ether, and that person may not ever even see it. So let's talk about that problem, deliverability, your perspective on it, and then how sales reps can one educate their leadership team again on it and a solution for it.
Yeah. So the big picture here is that the like different tech companies are really fighting with each other over very basic things. What's happening overall, I think, and most, I think especially, folks who are listening to this, selling to technology companies, excuse me, using technology. So it's not like the old days where you're knocking on doors. So it matters what the different platforms are doing, right?
Okay.
So like Google and Microsoft and Zoho and these different companies are treating each other's email differently, just like for starters.
Okay.
So like they're preferencing emails sent within their own tool. So if you send an email from a Google Workspace account to another Google user, it's more likely to land in their inbox, for example, than if you were to send it to an Outlook account. And so so all the way down to the tool, the email provider that you're using. And then to the thing that you can control a little bit more easily is like you're sending volume. So, they're watching behaviors on email accounts. And if things are suspicious, if you have too many identical emails going out at too high a volume in too short a time, like they're going to lock things down. They're going to lock accounts, and that's just going to keep happening. Like, so there's Google is clamping down on different use of their API and things like that. So there's a lot of different things that people I think take for granted today in terms of their ability to like get in the inbox. And so
Hmm.
like the fundamentals of this are using the right tool for the job. And so first that's going to start with like setting up a domain if you're doing cold email for deliverability. So all the DNS records. Um, if if possible, what I strongly recommend is like these days it's multiple domains and multiple different providers and then using the right tool for that sending process. So like there's dedicated pure cold outreach tools that are going to be able to handle variable copywriting, variable
Hmm.
sending windows, things like that. I like Smart Lead. We use Smart Lead, and that job is really to start conversations. Once you have conversations and replies with people, there's still room for a CRM. There's still room for the ability to send smaller sequences out and
Hmm.
to call down a list and to work in a more targeted way. But if a tool wasn't built to send, you know, tons of emails through a channel that wants it,
Hmm.
you're potentially going to run into some trouble. And so I think thinking about using the right tool for the right job, and making sure that you're not using the wrong tools, because otherwise you're just emails aren't going to send.
Yeah.
You're just not going to get through. And doing omni-channel, using tools that can support like phone, that can support SMS,
Hmm.
um, adding different channels to your mix is also a really good way to get around this deliverability problem, is so that you're not just a one-trick pony, and so that if you do have an issue with one channel, you're not all of a sudden hung out to dry.
Totally. Which then comes back to your point. If you're trying to do this all-in-one solution, you're not going to be able to identify the problem appropriately. If you are using a specific tool for warming up your domain, sending those emails at a higher volume, using different domains, tracking that, you have specific analytics for that, you can identify if the problem's there, right? Versus if it's just you're blasting it out in a different tool and you have no awareness, you just don't know what the problem is. You could be writing the best copy ever, but you have no clue if that copy is actually delivered.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And like just to be honest with you, it is a numbers game. Like you
yeah,
need
for
to be
sure.
able to build a system that allows you to hit some level of volume. I'm
Yeah,
not saying go out and email 10,000 people a day, but if you're writing personally 2 to 5 emails a day, like it's just not going to cut it. Like it's not
right.
enough activity. Your surface area for opportunity is too small. So
Yeah,
you need to have tools that are going to allow you to operate at a little bit of a higher volume.
got it. Got it. And now let's say you overcome those first two hoops. You got decent data. You've got a warmed up domain. You're following what Harris said. Maybe you're using multiple providers. Like you're doing it the right way in order to give you the best chance to land in the inbox. Now, once you're in the right place and you've made it to their inbox, now how are you competing?
Yeah. So, my bias is towards relevance here,
Okay.
where it's like, how do we think about messaging that's going to be broadly interesting to folks? Rather than being like, hey, I saw, on LinkedIn that your cat's name is Fluffy or whatever. You know, if you can speak to like what's happening within an industry, what's
Yeah.
happening within their job function, if in a way that's very simple, very to the point, like lavender.ai is a really good tool to help you with your copy. You want your emails to be a couple sentences ending with very close-ended questions that speak to where they're at. And that, in my experience, outperforms personalization at lower volume. So
Mm,
somewhat higher volume with more relevance, where you're doing a little bit more research ahead of time, which you can do programmatically. I'm seeing better results. I'm seeing folks are getting better results that way. Um, and relevance means just like understanding what is it like to be them, what is the challenges that they're facing, what are the challenges that people like them are facing,
yep.
um, and not writing complicated emails, not having attachments, not having a bunch of links to other things. Like, you just need to say, what can I do to get their attention in a couple sentences with text to start a conversation? And that
Mhm.
that needs to be the bar that you need to clear. It,
Okay.
it doesn't matter if marketing made some incredible, 5-minute case study video. Like, they don't know who you are or care enough to watch that yet. And so if you can't speak to them in a relevant way in a couple sentences of text, keep workshopping it until you can.
Okay. Now, if to give sales reps who might be listening to this or reading this some perspective, let's say let's say there's one prospect that 10 sales reps are going after. And how many of those sales reps, one, do you think land in the inbox to actually push their relevant messaging?
Mm.
Like today, if you just ballpark it, this is just like gut check.
That's a great question. What I would say that people don't realize is that it depends on when they started their job and when they started sending their
Totally.
emails. The longer
Yeah.
someone's been in a job, typically the more things will dovetail. So
Okay.
it's really hard for me to say, but I would say, man, um, I would say a majority of those emails that are getting sent are probably not landing in the inbox. So I
Okay.
would say probably more than half aren't getting there. Like, you can distinguish yourself quickly by doing these things. And then doing some extra stuff like setting up your LinkedIn profile and doing social selling and being active there. You mentioned video, getting comfortable with, if you can get that person's attention and then they're in your pipeline, sending a personal 30 to 60 second, vidyard type video.
Yep.
There's things you can do to be really exceptional. And if you can even just get in the inbox, I think you're ahead of a lot of reps. I think a lot of people who are sending in volume, um, most of their emails are probably landing in spam.
Okay. So you have the good data, you land in the inbox, you have good messaging. You might be one of the only ones that are actually competing at that point, even if in a pool of 10.
Yeah. Yeah,
Let's
yeah. I
assume
mean,
that 10 are
and
competing at the same exact time for the same prospect.
yeah, yeah. And then the last thing to think about is, like, if you know your prospect, then, and this is something where I've seen like a lot of lift on our campaigns, think about their day,
Yeah.
right? So, like, when do they check email?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're loading up a sending tool and you're saying, okay, send these emails between 9 and 5 p.m., Eastern time, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're in meetings, maybe they're getting slammed with stuff. Play around with some weird sending windows. I've actually seen some pretty good traction sending campaigns on Sundays. Seen some pretty good traction sending campaigns in the evenings between like 4 to 8 p.m. when maybe
Mm-hmm.
someone's checking a couple emails before bed.
Sure.
So I think the way you're thinking about it is exactly right. Like, what is it like to be the prospect? What
Mm-hmm.
is it like to be in their inbox, thinking about their day? They've got their to-dos, they've got phone calls, whatever. They've got all these meetings and stuff going on. What is it like to literally be them?
Yep.
And how can you stand out relative to all the other people that are fighting for their attention? I think, like, if I had to end this with one thing, I think that is like the most important thing is what you're emphasizing here, which is to, like, put yourself in their shoes, and what is it like to receive your email? Would you want that? Is
Yep.
that when you would check it? Is this something that you would easily reply to, or would you have to think about how to reply? Stuff like that.
Absolutely. So what I love about this conversation in general is I think in 2023 there's going to be a major marriage of, yes, good quality tech that allows you to land in the inbox, but once you're able to land in that inbox, the sales rep's job is to be human and build that relationship
Mhm.
and solve a problem for somebody and understand the other person, right? That's what salespeople are paid the big bucks to do really, really well. So if you're a sales rep and you're listening to this, like, this is your opportunity to compete. If you can take Harris's advice and get in their inbox with really relevant, high quality messaging, you can go and win the world this year. But with your sales talents accompanied with that tech to land in the inbox.
Yeah. I mean, all we're talking about is just like the pregame, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
pregame.
okay,
Totally.
now they replied, they're interested. Now is where the real sales begin.
Mhm. Yeah.
Where I'm going to listen to them in their conversation. If I have a tool that can record my calls and makes it easy for me to keep up with my tasks instead of having like a mountain of overdue tasks that I never check or care about. Smart views are great for this, being able to cut through and be like, these are the things I need to focus on,
Yep.
and smart view is unique to close. This is all table stakes. This is like literally just to like get to the party. And then this is where you as a salesperson really prove your worth, do your job, and have the right set of tools and process and approach to actually help solve those customers' problems. Tools are secondary, but I do think it's like finding the best one for the job can allow you to stand out, because frankly, like, a lot of close customers, they're scrappy.
Yep.
They're not these huge heavy companies with 500-person sales teams, and like that can be an advantage. Like,
Yes.
you can't afford the tools that those big teams pay for, but those big tools also, like, they have bloated product management pipelines with features that never ship. And it's like, if you can find the right set of tools with smaller teams with more responsive engineering groups that are shipping features faster, that can be your advantage. So like, you can't beat a big company by trying to use their same tools and trying to be like them, because A, they can afford it, and they can afford the support, and they afford the implementation and all that stuff. But B, like, why would you accept the handicaps and constraints that come with those tools? Why
Totally.
not pick tools that give you an edge?
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Well, cool. We will in this post, we will put the links to the tools that Harris recommends. Harris consults on this stuff too, so he's an expert in this. If you're really struggling with this, you can contact Harris. Harris, do you have a preferred way of being contacted? LinkedIn, email, website?
Yeah. Sorry, site's IntroCRM.com. You can email me, Harris at IntroCRM.com, or find me on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Cool.
I'm active in those spots, and would love to hear from you.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Harris. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, James.
See ya.